Welcome to Cognitive Spirals, exploring the latest research into consciousness, cognition, and machine intelligence. Hey everyone, and yeah, today we're diving deep into this Kimi K1.5 technical report. It's a bit of a beast, but there's some fascinating stuff in there. Definitely a beast. I've been trying to wrap my head around some of the implications all week. It feels like it touches on so many different areas, from the purely technical side of AI to how we think about ourselves really. Yeah, it's almost overwhelming in its scope, but really, it's that breadth that makes it so important. The report really highlights the interconnections in ways we don't always consider, especially when you start thinking about how AI is evolving so rapidly. I mean, right. So, for the listeners who might not be familiar, this report is essentially looking at, I guess you could say, a model of how the human mind and body are interrelated, but through the lens of machine learning. They seem to be using these highly advanced AI systems to essentially map out and even try to predict these connections. Things like how mental states affect physical responses and vice versa, and even going into the specific neural networks involved. Exactly. And the real kicker, at least for me, is how it all seems to point towards a kind of feedback loop. Like the K1.5 report seems to really support that idea that negative thought patterns actually contribute to physical distress, and then that physical distress just feeds back into the negative thinking. It's this cycle, and they seem to be starting to map out the physiological pathways that underpin that cycle. That feedback loop concept is key. It makes you wonder how we can break it. It's not enough to just address the symptoms, right? If it's this self-reinforcing cycle, you've got to find a way to disrupt the underlying mechanisms. That's where I see the connections to what I've been looking at with exercise and sleep. Like, getting consistent sleep and regular physical activity could, in theory, help reset that cycle, giving the body the resources it needs to deal with physical and psychological stressors. And it's that idea of disruption that gets me thinking. If we accept that these feedback loops exist, then how do we tailor our interventions to specifically target them? Is it as simple as exercise more, sleep more? I don't think so. I think we need more nuance. The report hints that the neural pathways involved are incredibly complex and that it might be more efficient to target the mental component, not just the physical. So how might techniques like CBT, for example, play a crucial role in breaking this loop by reshaping those cognitive patterns? That's interesting because what jumped out at me was this connection to emotional regulation. The report touches on it a bit. This idea that specific types of meditation, like loving kindness or even just mindful breathing, can actually change the way our brains respond to stress. It seems these aren't just relaxation techniques, but ways to actively rewire these feedback loops, calm the nervous system, and impact our overall well-being. Yes, and I think you're spot on with the emotional regulation piece. The report really does show how closely linked our cognitive and emotional processes are to our physical responses. I was really struck by the idea that you can physically improve yourself through more deliberate reframing of your thoughts. It's like, if you can learn to identify and challenge those negative thought patterns, using CBT, for example, it actually could impact your physiology. We tend to think that these things are separate, that thoughts are just thoughts, but this shows that they actually create our physical state. It's almost like CBT is hacking the body from the top down, which is fascinating. And that meshes well with the sleep and exercise side too. I've been experimenting with interval training lately, and the impact on my sleep has been significant. It seems like those higher intensity bursts actually trigger these hormonal responses that promote better rest, which all then feeds back into improved cognitive function. It's all connected, not just independent systems. The interplay is definitely key, and it isn't just exercise more, sleep more. It's more about targeting specific pathways with particular types of exercises, particular sleep techniques, and particular mental exercises. The report emphasizes that we can't treat these elements as separate pieces. It also got me thinking about the future, specifically how will our ability to hack these feedback loops evolve alongside the progress of AI. The Kimi 1.5 seems to be just the beginning. They're starting to map these incredibly complex pathways. But what happens when AI can actively model and adapt these loops in real time in very personalized ways? That's potentially both incredibly powerful and also, frankly, a little scary. I see what you mean, that idea of personalized, real-time interventions. It does feel like we're moving towards something that's both exciting and a little unnerving. Thinking about meditation again, I've been experimenting with combining mindful movement and consistent meditation. And what's interesting is the synergistic effect you get. It seems more powerful than just doing them on their own. I've been using breathwork exercises in my workout, and then creating a morning meditation to reduce my stress levels. I'm even thinking of creating a whole personalized meditation playlist with nature sounds, calming instrumental music, and guided meditations. It just feels so much more impactful when you start combining these different elements. That makes total sense. It's almost like you're creating a whole system that supports your well-being from multiple angles, rather than just a single intervention. And yeah, the K1.5 report really does seem to support that idea that these kinds of holistic, interconnected approaches are the most effective. And when you talk about your personalized meditation playlists, it reminds me of how we could even personalize CBT interventions, for instance. If we could use AI to analyze someone's specific thought patterns and then tailor their therapy to address their cognitive distortions more accurately, that could be a real game changer. It moves away from generic interventions and towards truly personalized care. And what's exciting about that personalization aspect is how it could also tie into exercise and sleep. I mean, what if AI could analyze someone's exercise performance and then suggest a very specific sleep schedule to maximize recovery, even suggesting specific pre-sleep stretches and breathing exercises? And that same system could adapt and change as a person improves. Instead of one-size-fits-all exercise recommendations, you could have a truly personalized fitness program designed to improve your sleep quality, which then improves your cognitive performance, which circles back and influences the other two. It's like this whole system working in tandem. Right, it's like, if the AI learns from our biased data, then it will only replicate those biases. So, it reinforces the status quo rather than truly optimizing health outcomes. Which is why you have to keep considering humanistic considerations in the design. And I guess it's the same in lifestyle changes, even something simple like mindful eating. We can't just adopt rigid rules. We need to understand our motivations and be flexible and work with our natural instincts instead of against them. I mean, for me, it's about listening to the body and enjoying the textures and flavors of food rather than thinking about calories or restricting myself. It's so much more enjoyable and ultimately more sustainable as a long-term strategy. Yeah, that idea of a Nietzschean blind spot in the AI resonates with me too. It really underscores the limitations of any purely algorithmic approach to something as complex as human health. If you boil it down, no matter how advanced the AI, we're still dealing with human beings, each with their unique circumstances and inherent uncertainties. And that's also where the CBT side comes back in, right? It's not just about retraining your thoughts. It's about increasing your ability to be flexible with your thinking, to be able to adapt and reframe perspectives when facing difficult challenges. Cognitive flexibility, it seems, is a key factor in responding well to stress and uncertainty. And that ties into what I was saying about resilience. The report mentions that a lot of those who faced the wildfires in California showed incredible adaptability in the face of significant adversity, which feels really relevant. And it highlights how important it is to understand the connection between physical and mental health in these extreme situations. People who had those practices ingrained, who were already exercising and prioritizing sleep, they were probably better equipped to handle the stress than those who didn't. So it's like when the pressure is really on. Those habits are a bedrock of personal strength. That's absolutely right. The wildfire examples are really powerful, and it speaks to the idea of preparedness and proactive measures. It's not just about reacting to a crisis, but building resilience beforehand. The report hints that a proactive approach that combines sleep and exercise with cognitive techniques and mindfulness might be crucial for building that resilience in the face of future uncertainties. It highlights we can use AI to better understand this process, but we must design these systems with human limitations in mind, not in spite of them. It makes me think about how I can further improve my own routine, maybe incorporate a more structured breathwork practice into my workouts, and be more intentional with how I start my day. Maybe I should create a specific morning routine that includes light movement, breathwork, and meditation. It seems like the more I combine these things, the more potent it becomes, the more I can potentially avoid stress reactions when I encounter difficult situations, and the more I'm improving my overall well-being. And the more consistently I maintain those habits, the better. And from my perspective, I think the focus for future research should really be about fine-tuning those CBT techniques. The report seems to emphasize the profound impact of cognitive processes on physical health. And I think that it is worth exploring how we can leverage more personalized CBT to target the physiological responses, not just the mental, especially when these cycles can feel like they're outside of our control. And really understanding that link, how these thought patterns manifest in our physical states, I think, really, understanding that will be a really big step forward. For me, I'm most excited about the future research into how specific exercise and sleep protocols might be integrated into a personalized routine to enhance cognitive function. I think it's important to look into how we can use these approaches to optimize sleep cycles for people with different routines, as well as how to adjust exercise intensity to maximize the benefits of exercise in tandem with sleep. This interplay between physical activity and sleep feels incredibly fertile for future exploration. I agree, and for me, I think the most pressing direction for research is in understanding these evolutionary blind spots that the AI models inherit. How can we ensure AI systems, particularly in health and mental health, are not replicating and amplifying the limitations of our current thinking? I also believe that we should also explore the intersection of cognitive science and machine learning to help us design algorithms that are not just efficient but also more adaptable and more human-like in their learning process. I think that's the crucial challenge of our times, really. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I think the potential here for improving health and well-being is enormous, especially if we think about holistic approaches that combine lifestyle changes with mental techniques and personalized AI. Definitely, it's clear that these areas are deeply interconnected, and the Kimi 1.5 report really underscores the importance of approaching health and well-being holistically, and not in isolation. And it's exciting to see how technology might help us achieve those things. Absolutely, the research highlights how much there is still to learn, and that we must continue to push the boundaries of science to create more effective systems to promote true well-being in the future.